Hi guys, so sorry it's a little dark in here, I'm at home, but this video is going to be about Andrew Carnegie and Henry Frick. But first we will be talking about Andrew Carnegie, so let's get into it. So our action for this one will be putting your hands on your hips and looking up like Superman and saying da 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 da, Andrew Carnegie, beard of steel. Okay, so you can guess that Andrew Carnegie was in the steel business, the steel industry. So we'll talk more about his journey, how he got into that business. So Andrew Carnegie was an immigrant from Scotland. Over in Scotland, his family was really into the weaving business, weaving textiles, carpets, stuff like that. And after a while, it was kind of clear that that wasn't really making a lot of money. So his mom and the rest of his family were looking for different ways that they can make more money for their family and provide for them. And his mom takes a couple of odd jobs, but she hears from Carnegie's aunt, who is over in, I believe, Pennsylvania, that the United States has really good opportunities for work and for making more money. So they pack the family up, and Carnegie isn't that old. I want to say he's like 11, 12, or 13. I know that's a lot of ages, but between that age range, right? So around your age, Carnegie is going over to the United States. And what we see a lot with immigrants going over to the United States is they have this like fixed picture because they've been dreaming about going over and starting a new life in this new land, right? They have this fixed picture of what they think the United States will be like, and it doesn't always live up to the hype. So picture this. You've been thinking about moving to America this whole time, and you're so excited, and you finally get off the boat. First of all, the boat ride is, I shouldn't say ride, the boat journey is around 50 days, okay? So yikes. And on the ship, it's not like you're just chilling in your cabin like on a cruise. They actually had to help out on the ship, which is crazy. They were understaffed, and Carnegie would often volunteer to take odd jobs around the ship to get some extra food and stuff like that. So it's not as glamorous on the ship. And then they finally get there, and they get off the ship, and they're met with a ton of air pollution. Oh my goodness. The clouds are full of gross, just clouds of smoke and soot. One thing that Carnegie writes about later is that when they got off the ship, they would walk around, and after about an hour, they'd be able to touch their face, and there'd be soot, or like if you've ever seen Mary Poppins, the chimney sweeps have all those all this dirt and gross black stuff on their face. That's a good explanation of soot. But after a while, an hour, they'd be walking around, and they'd wipe their cheeks, and there'd be soot all over. And then so they'd clean up their face, and they'd go back out and walk around. And then at another hour, they'd be still covered in soot. That's how gross the air quality was. So not all sunshines and rainbows after they get off the ship. But they do travel to America. And after a while, Carnegie works a couple of jobs until he's working for this company, and this telegraph operator, which we know from previous units, which was a way of, what am I going to say? Oh, communicating between people, right? Using a language called Morse code. He was asked to fill in for one of the telegraph operators and kind of man and write down messages as they came through in Morse code. So he gets so good at this, guys, it's insane. He gets so good at this that all he has to hear is the dots and dashes, right, the beeps, and he can write it down in full sentences, which is pretty remarkable. His brain kind of worked differently than I think most people. He would often memorize street signs, so he wouldn't have to look at maps. He would memorize the faces of the people he had to make deliveries to. He would not only memorize their faces, but also the faces of their secretaries and servants, so that if he saw them on the street, he could deliver the message quickly without going all the way there. So big brain energy from Andrew Carnegie. We see Carnegie kind of moving up to become a telegraph operator, and that is where he gets the recognition from Thomas Scott. And Thomas Scott will become a really good ally in Carnegie's life. He hires Carnegie to be his private secretary and run his private telegraph, and he gets a huge pay increase because before he was making barely anything, and I believe his pay increase is like $35 a month, which doesn't seem like a lot, but at this point in his life, that's a ton. And it's kind of crazy to see what he's making then versus what he makes eventually in the future, starting in the steel business. So that's super cool. So he works for Scott for a couple of years until he finally leaves to form his own company. They leave on good terms, though. Scott and Carnegie will go on to help each other later in life. But he goes on to form the Keystone Bridge Company. And this is where he makes his money. He's taking steel and building bridges, which, it kind of correlates with our buddy Vanderbilt. But he builds the Keystone Bridge Company and starts making just a ton of money. And what's different about Carnegie as opposed to our other guys here is that he actually gives away his money to the city. And they kind of see him as sort of the Santa Claus figure. He loves to give away libraries. Oh my gosh, he loves to give away libraries. He also really likes to give money to the arts. For example, he donates a music hall, which you would probably recognize the name Carnegie Hall in New York. And it's just, he's very generous with his money. He had this idea to write himself a letter, first of all, very self-aware of him to write himself a letter. How many times have you done that? Writes himself a letter and says, Dear, I'm paraphrasing, this is not what I actually wrote, but Dear Andrew, I need you to set aside this amount of money. I believe it was like $50,000 a year. Gave himself an allowance to live off of, and you need to donate the rest of your money back to the city, which was really cool, right? He's self-aware enough. He's not getting too greedy, though I'm not saying that he wasn't greedy in some aspects and he was just this saint of a person, right? Everybody has their flaws. We learned that in history. Nobody's perfect. Nobody's perfect. That was a joke. Nobody's laughing. Nobody's here. So he gives all that money back to the city, which is really, really cool and very Santa-like of him. So later, Carnegie builds this bridge over the Mississippi. He had, at this time, found a new way to produce to produce steel, and he is building this bridge, and people are just so skeptical on how this could ever be a weight-bearing structure. So what he does is this is a very rich person flex. He hires a bunch of elephants, okay, to walk across the bridge to make sure that it is sturdy. Now, I don't know about you, but if you were just walking to work or riding to work, right, and you see a bunch of elephants walking over a bridge, wouldn't you just be confused? I don't know, maybe just me. Maybe you see elephants all the time in Sterling. I don't live there. Okay, so now we're going to talk about Henry Frick, okay? Quite possibly the opposite of Carnegie. So opposite that our action for this is, it's almost Christmas when you're watching this, hopefully. Almost Christmas, and this is going to be a Christmas themed one. We saw Santa in the last one, now it's the Grinch. So this action goes, you're a mean one, Mr. Frick. Okay, so that is, we can kind of guess what kind of person he is. Not a great one. Oh, I should say that the Frick we're going to be describing relates to the Grinch before his heart grew 3 sizes that day. Okay, so pre-forgiveness changed Grinch. Okay, mean Grinch. Okay, so Henry Frick hires Andrew Carnegie to take down John Rockefeller. Okay, at this point, Rockefeller and Carnegie are rivals, and Carnegie had turned to building city buildings, which is a fun sentence to say. He turns from bridges to building steel structures for buildings, which turned out to be a huge moneymaker. And like I said, Henry Frick is the opposite of Andrew Carnegie. Where we have Carnegie giving back to the community, Henry Frick is very, very greedy. And once again, I'm not saying that Carnegie is all perfect and Frick is all bad. I'm just saying there's a stark difference between the two, okay? And this is who we're comparing to for to remember it, okay? So Henry Frick, very greedy, very just cares about profit, really. At least I think Carnegie had some sort of a conscience, but Frick doesn't seem to have much. And one example is he built this country club, okay, which how many movies have you watched where the heroes belong to a country club? Probably slim to none, right? So he builds this country club, and in order to, he builds this country club, and it's right near a dam, and right below the dam, whoever idea this was is crazy, but right below the dam is a city by the name of Johnstown. And Johnstown is right, so the dam is right here, Johnstown is down here, okay, right near the country club. And at the country club, there was a road leading up to it, and Frick and the people that ran the country club realized that they needed to widen the road. And in order to widen the road, they had to weaken the dam, which is never a good idea, okay? Like, find another entrance, bro. I don't know. But he decides to go through with it because he literally doesn't care. And as you would expect, the dam breaks and it floods the town of Johnstown. And there 2,000 people die, 1,600, I believe, lose their homes. And here's some pictures from it. You can't even imagine the devastation after this flood. One story depicts that these people were in their houses hanging on for dear life, and all of a sudden the rush of water comes in, and this guy just streams in with the water, and they go, "Where did you come from?" And he said, "Oh my gosh, the water from the dam was so strong it rushed me a mile down from where I started." That's how crazy these floodwaters are, okay? So not a great guy. Okay, really quick, go back to my subject. 1 second. Okay. So he obviously goes to court and he wins. That just shows how powerful he is. Justice is not served. And Carnegie feels bad. And he decides to help with relief efforts. So like we learned about the Red Cross, they're usually there in times of disaster. They have similar efforts here, kind of helping people clean up and relocate people and give people food and supplies and provide a roof over their heads, right? Carnegie decides to help with that, maybe because he feels bad, but also flood because of country club owned by Carnegie and Frick ruins town and lives isn't a great headline. So he decides to kind of help his image. And so I have this picture of Kim Kardashian at a soup kitchen. Not saying Kim Kardashian doesn't care about the poor, but the picture is a little suspicious. It gets her at all the right angles, I guess. You know? Like, I don't know. Suspicious. Okay, so back to Henry Frick and his terribleness. Part 2. So working for Henry Frick, not great. He treats his workers like pretty terrible, to say the least. He decides to institute a 12-hour work day, 12 hours a day, and they have to work 6 days a week. Okay, which is crazy. He also, on top of that, okay, you're working a ton, you're very tired. He lowers the wages, so the amount of money people are making, and the working conditions are still so dangerous. One just terrible thing that he does is he tries to hire the local sheriff and his sheriff's department to stand around a barbed wire gate with little huts like this, okay, around the factory. He orders them to stand there and kind of police the workers. That'd be like if you were in Kroger and you're working for Kroger and you're stacking soup cans and a cop comes up behind you and is like, hey, holds a gun to your head. Hey, you're stacking those wrong. Restack them right now or I'll shoot you. That would make you not want to work for Kroger anymore. You'd probably want to turn in your nice little name tag and your apron. I think there were aprons at Kroger. Yeah. Not great, okay? So the workers end up running those sheriffs out of the building, right? They kick them out. But Frick does eventually bring them back in to police the workers. It's just awful. And so Henry Frick treats his workers terribly, and because of that, they end up striking, okay? They end up protesting and refusing to work. So instead of negotiating it with them, if there's a strike, usually the company will bring in people and the strikers will have representatives and they'll get together and negotiate and come up with a compromise, okay? That's always a good lesson, compromise. But instead, Henry Frick is like, no, I'm not doing that. I'm actually going to bring in a whole army and I'm going to threaten the strikers to stop or violence will break out. And that's exactly what happens. 9 strikers are killed and plenty are injured. And it's just a terrible way. And at one point, he goes to Carnegie because he's working with Carnegie still. He goes to Carnegie and he's like, hey, I think that we should just fire all these people and get new workers. And Carnegie's like, bro, chill. Maybe we'll just wait them out, So we see Carnegie being hesitant of Frick's kind of terrible ways. But it's important to know that Carnegie still went along with it, okay? So most of the time when we see people that are disliked this much, it means that something bad's coming for them. And we see this with Henry Frick. And Henry Frick ends up being assassinated, but almost, an attempted assassination against Henry Frick. When a Russian anarchist comes into his office, he asks his secretary where the boss man is, and the secretary's like, I don't know. He's not here, which is usually what secretaries say when the person is there. But the anarchist pushes past the secretary and goes in and finds Henry Frick, shoots him once, okay, he falls to the ground, shoots him again, okay, because he's still not dead, and then stabs him. And you know what? This man lives against all odds, against 3 major obstacles, more specifically, okay? He lives, and he ends up, so the doctors fix him up, okay? And this dude tries to go right back to work. Are you kidding me, dude? Go home. Take a snooze, right? See your family. Hug your family. Talk about how we only have one life to live and time is fleeting, But he tries to just go back and signing some papers. They send him home. He ends up sending a telegram to Carnegie, okay, his major business partner, and his mother, right? And he says one sentence, okay? And just imagine that one of your loved ones or your friends has something like this happen to them and they send you just this sentence and you're not really able to reply to them right away, right? Because he sent it via telegram. This is what he says. He says, was shot twice, but not dangerously. Was shot twice, but not dangerously. Think about that. My mom would be on a train, on a horse, okay, riding to me to yell at me for only sending that sentence to her without any context, okay? And he had a lot of money at this point, so it's not like telegrams were too expensive for him. He could have put a bit more context for him in there. But anyway, the public crazily enough, even though he's terrible, feels sympathy for the guy. This whole situation actually helps the strike kind of end and collapse, which is kind of crazy considering this dude is pretty terrible and treats other people pretty terrible. But because he almost died, everyone's like, oh, let's give him a break. He almost died, you know? I don't know. Crazy. Okay, so in the next video, we learn about J.P. Morgan, and I'll see you in the next one.